What's up, guys? It's Toad back with you again. This is Better Off Dead college football week 13. We only have, I think, one full week of college football left, right? It's crazy. The season has flown by. I've had a good college football season, even though my 13-1 run ended. I mean, it had to regress at some point. I probably shouldn't have played that Eastern Michigan game in the middle of the week, but they outgained Buffalo in that game, man. It was bad. Turnover discrepancy of -3. What can you do? I started out 0-2 this week, and now I'm 1-2. I played a lot of college football this week. NC State got there last night, and they almost pulled off the outright upset. I mean, I had a nice day last night, man. 5-1, or if you did the split bet on the Bruins, as I originally had recommended on the shows, 4-1-1, if you want to call it that. Either way, a nice day. Tonight has not been quite as nice. I started out 2-1 in college basketball. Virginia was just a complete bust. I don't know what that was. And Texas looked like they might not get there. It was one of those patented Texas low-scoring, ugly games, but it played to their pace. They did cover, so they got away with one there. They covered by like 1 point or something, and then Grand Canyon was pretty much no sweat. That line was up to like 17, 18 when the game went off. I don't know how much they wound up actually winning by, but I had like 14 and a half, so that wound up being an easy cover. Ken Palm's number, I don't know what was going on with that. It was way off there, but looks like Arizona is going to completely blow it for me. That game totally being played at Duke's pace. I don't know what is going on with Arizona, and I definitely need the Dallas Mavericks here. Dallas Mavericks, I have the game on right here, man. Jokic came back. I talked about this morning. Jokic came back for Denver, and I think Denver went off at 4.5. I got +4 on Dallas. Dallas has been winning this entire game, dude. And they were up 19 points in the third quarter, and then all of a sudden I look and it's like 6 or 5 or something. I'm like, what the hell just happened? I think Denver went on like a 13-0 run. Dallas is still hanging on right now. I need Dallas to cover to get me a winning night. If Dallas covers, I'll win on the night, assuming Arizona's going to lose. And if they win outright, it'll be a little bit better for me. So hopefully that'll happen. What's up, Charles? You're going to fall asleep. Yeah, hang out for a bit, man. But my plays are actually going to be towards the end of the show, as usual. Dustin, what's up, man? DraftKings is built backwards. Why? Is the site retarded right now? What's going on? Nancy, love you too. Let's get into college football, man. We'll talk about this. So I'm 1-2 this week. I have a lot of college football plays this week, and I was trying to figure out what I want to do with Saturday's card here. I do have 3 plays here, which actually, speaking of which, I should get those in the banners here so I can actually show them, right? So let me get these in real quick here, and then I'm going to talk about a few of the bigger games and talk about my plays and a couple of games that I almost made plays. I'm trying to remember what my plays actually are right now. Actually, let me see here. I'm getting them in place here, and then what was the other one that I even had? Why do I not remember? Oh yeah, I think I do remember. All right, getting this in real quick, and then I'll start talking about these games. I don't know if I got these lines completely right, but I have 2 underdogs and a favorite here, so you guys can try to guess what those are, and I'll get to those eventually. JC, what's up? Hey guys, thanks for hanging out. Friday night, hell yeah, it's a party. Better Off Dead. Will, what's up? You still want me to do NXS? I don't know, man. I went 80s new wave tonight. At least I did some Tears for Fears because I like them. My voice is like right in that range. Kurt Smith, whatever. And who was the other guy? I don't remember the other guy's name. Oh my God, Bobby Ballbags. What's up, my man? Royal Deluxe. You're jelking it? All right, yeah, stretch it out. I jelk this show, man. I stretch it out way too much. I'm going to try not to do that, though. So let's talk about these games. UNLV San Jose State is on right now, and that's a pretty interesting game right now as well. That was a game where I had said I thought it was going to go under this morning, and I think that looks like it's going to be the case. Oh, my God. Denver actually took the lead. This is so bad, dude. I don't even think I want to watch the end of this, man. San Jose State. I'm going to try to switch it to San Jose State right now. I can't do it. I can't watch it. You'll see me voice commanded. There it goes. FS1. I'm going to watch this football game I don't have money on so I don't puke. Because, dude, I'm telling you, if Dallas doesn't cover the spread and I have a 2-3 night, I'm not going to be happy. It looked like it was going to be a winning night, at least slightly for me. Dallas looked like they were going to have a wire-to-wire win, man. Jokic coming back made it a reverse injured player theory spot on one side and injured player theory spot on the Dallas side with Luka out. I talked about it this morning. You can go watch my video, which, by the way, I apologize for the internet being out, or Comcast should apologize to all of you, because I had to do the video on my phone, not live, and uploaded it. So if you guys wanted that video, hopefully you got it. But it hasn't been a great day for me, so you're not missing out on a whole lot. All right, college football. Let's talk about it. We have a few huge games, man, and obviously the biggest game up. This is a game I almost played. Indiana, Ohio State. This is number 5 Indiana against number 2 Ohio State. Indiana's still undefeated. Ohio State's a one-loss team. But we're going to go over and we're going to look at what the line is in this game. Oh, Ohio State, they were 11.5-point favorite, and now they're sitting at a 10.5-point favorite. Indiana's got 59% of the tickets, so they're looking like a little bit of a public underdog here. And cash evenly split 50-50 right now. Oh, boy. So what are we looking at here? We got this one-loss Ohio State team, but even the rankings makers are telling you Ohio State is actually the better of these two teams. Odds makers are telling you they're the significantly better team. This game is in Columbus, Ohio, I'm pretty sure. I like the Ohio State side here, man. I think Indiana is out of their depth here. I mean, I know they have all those transfers that came over from JMU, who was a good team last year. They have the coach from that team. He's a really good coach. They do have real talent on this Indiana team. They brought over Rourke, the quarterback from Ohio. Yeah, Indiana's had a really good season. But if you dive into this a little bit further, man, the odds makers are correct in this one. Ohio State is the better team, and I would only lay the points with Ohio State in this one. If we look at what Indiana has done, I mean, yeah, they've done nothing wrong. They've won every game, but look at how weak their schedule has been, man. Indiana has not faced a team that is currently bowl eligible. None of their opponents that they faced this year have gotten a 6th win yet. That's how weak their schedule is. I don't think I've seen anything like this before, yet they're ranked 5th in the country. And is that justified? No, I'm going to say it's not. And you know me, if you follow my show, I also think Ohio State is actually the best team in the country. I think they're actually better than Oregon, as the odds makers told you back when Ohio State was laying 3 points on the road at Oregon. It was just a tough spot, tough environment for them to go to, you know, having to go out to an unfamiliar place on the Pacific Coast there. It was not a great spot for them. But Indiana, they're also coming out of a bye. And yeah, they had a close call against Michigan, which was a game where Indiana was favored and should have won the game more easily. A 14.5-point favorite. Okay, yeah, sure. But that bye, I mean, that could hurt their momentum, man. I mean, when you're winning like this, you don't want to stop playing. You don't want to have to go into a bye, even though obviously Indiana's going to be focused on Ohio State here because, I mean, both of these teams are trying to make the Big Ten championship right now, right? I mean, this is it for these two teams right here. They're both trying to get into the playoffs as well, playoff seeding. But the problem is, like I said, Ohio State, significantly better team, and they faced the more difficult schedule. I mean, they faced Penn State, beat them on the road. They faced Oregon and only lost by 1. They faced Iowa, who I believe they're bowl eligible at this point. So they've faced multiple teams who are bowl eligible now. And they're coming off, yes, they played last week, so Indiana's the more rested team. But like I said, I don't think the rest is actually going to help Indiana when it might stop their momentum. When they keep winning, you don't really want to have a week off like that. And Ohio State, they keep winning as well, and they played through, and they had an easy win over Northwestern. And they're going to be focused on this Indiana team. I know Ohio State, Michigan, it's the huge rivalry game, but come on, man. Ohio State, because they lost that game to Oregon, they know what's in front of them. They got to win the game. They can't afford a second loss. They want to be in the playoffs. They're a national title contender. They're probably the best team in the country. They're not going to be looking ahead to this down Michigan team, man. As big a rivalry as that is, this game matters big time. It's up right away at noon tomorrow. I like Ohio State in this one. They're just the better overall team, man. I think they're better on both sides of the ball. Indiana, like I said, I've never seen anything like this. So they played this week of schedule. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think Indiana has not beaten Ohio State in football since like the late 1980s. I don't even think that's an incorrect stat. I think that's what we got going on here. That's the history that you're trying to buck if you're going to play Indiana. Although, of course, you don't need them to win the game if you play them against the spread. You just need them to cover. But the public is coming in and thinking this is like a heavyweight fight and thinking that there's value, taking the points with Indiana, thinking this is going to be a good game. I think they're going to be disappointed, man. I think Ohio State wins this game rather easily. I would lay the points. I was close to actually doing it. Ohio State would be the side that I would recommend in that game if you were going to play it. Ole Miss, Florida is an interesting matchup, so I'll just talk about it because Ole Miss, they're coming out of a bye, and they went into that bye having beaten Georgia, which massive win. That was their biggest win of the season, man. So does that mean they're going to be in a letdown spot, plus that bye might halt their momentum? I mean, that is possible. That was a huge win for them against Georgia. The only thing is that Ole Miss, they can't afford another loss here. They're trying to get into the playoffs right now. They're fighting for that playoff positioning there, so they can't afford another loss at all. They got to take care of business here, so I don't want to come in and fade Ole Miss here. And, yeah, they have their rivalry against Mississippi State up next, but Mississippi State is awful. You think Michigan is having a down year? Mississippi State basically isn't even a team this year. So, full down Michigan for the bet. Yeah, well, you're not going to like my actual plays then when I start getting to them. What's up, guys? Anybody else in the chat here? Raven's saying this is the year of Toad. Well, thank you. I don't know if it is, but thank you, guys. AutisticRetards.com. Yeah, that is my website there. Charles, you know it. Dustin, what's up, man? Michigan's the worst defending national champion ever. Wait, UCF won a championship? What are you talking about? 2017? UCF? No, that can't be right. I'll have to look into that. I don't know what you're talking about, Dustin, but I'll attempt to look into what you're talking about there. I don't know. But hopefully, yeah, it is the year of the Toad. Hopefully, I'm going to get some wins going on here. But yeah, as I was saying, Ole Miss, I don't necessarily want to step in front of them, man. In Florida, they do need one more win to become bowl eligible, though. So I do think Florida still wants that because I think they were not bowl eligible last year. And this is a Florida team. They're a well-respected program. They really don't want to have 2 straight seasons where they don't make a bowl. So having Ole Miss, a highly ranked team, coming into their place, and it's their senior day, I do expect Florida to show up in this game. So I might still say a slight lean to the Florida side in this one, but not strong because Ole Miss does need to win as well. And Florida does have Florida State up next, even though it is on the road. Or I don't know if it's a neutral site game for that one or not. It might just be at Florida State, but Florida may be able to win that game as bad as Florida State has been. So maybe they will still make a bowl even if they don't get this game. It's going to be tough for them to get this game. Where the hell is it, man? There it is. Ole Miss is up from 9 to 11.5 in this one, but they are public. 67% of tickets, 62% of the cash. So at a line like this, again, I would lean to the Florida side, but I'm not going to do it. SMU, Virginia. I'll talk about it just because it's a little bit of an interesting scenario. SMU's fighting to get into the ACC championship game, which it looks like they will. There is a possibility they fall out of it, so they don't want to lose this game. So they do still need it. They're coming off a game where they won and didn't cover against my Boston College Eagles. The Eagles playing pretty well, by the way. I'll talk about the Eagles game, actually, in a second, because I do actually have an opinion in that game, even though I'm not playing it. SMU coming off of that, they're going on the road to face Virginia, and then they got Cal to finish the season. But like I said, SMU needs to keep playing and needs to win. So I actually do lean to SMU in this one. And like I said, they're coming off a win that wasn't really that impressive against BC. So I think maybe they were just kind of going through the motions there a little bit against an inferior team. Although BC did beat SMU in the bowl last year in the Fenway Bowl, the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. So I think maybe SMU remembered that because they do have a lot of the same players on this SMU team. So maybe they remembered that and wanted to get the win for that reason. Virginia, yeah, I know they need one more win to become bowl eligible, but this is going to be tough, man. In Virginia, they were in a bowl last year, and I think they crushed Coastal Carolina or something, but this is just a tough schedule that they've had to face, man. They've had almost no let-up in here, facing Louisville, Clemson. They got killed by UNC because I think it was because it was sandwiched in there. Pitt, they actually beat Pitt, which was one of my wins a couple of weeks ago. Bad spot for Pitt. And then Virginia played Notre Dame last week. And even though they got kind of blown out in that game, that's still Notre Dame. And they have the big rivalry against Virginia Tech next week. I'm not saying they're going to be unfocused with SMU coming into their place, and they have the chance to spoil SMU's season at the very least, SMU being a newcomer to the ACC, and it's senior day for Virginia. So I'm not going to actually pull the trigger and fade Virginia here, but I do actually slightly lean to SMU because they do need to keep winning. SMU is sitting at 10, up to 10 with juice. Oh, UNLV just took the lead, it looks like. I haven't been paying attention. Interesting game there, UNLV, San Jose State. SMU's got 67% of tickets, 75% of the cash on them. So I do lean that way slightly in that one. Cade Klubnik. Wait, who's that? That's you, Dustin? I thought your name was Dustin Fugatti, man. I thought that was your name. Chrissa? No, not exactly. I mean, I message back and forth with her once in a while. Let me see here. What else we got here? Texas, I'm going to talk about just because Texas is in kind of an interesting spot here. Playing Kentucky. I know Kentucky's having a down season, but Texas, they do have a big game against Texas A&M up next, man. And this is potentially going to be the SEC championship game. As crazy as that sounds, I think those are the top teams in the SEC right now. Yes, with their conference record-wise, at least. So is Texas going to look past Kentucky? I mean, it is possible, but Texas had kind of a lackluster game last week as a 13.5-point favorite against Arkansas, so I don't know. Texas is the way better team over Kentucky, so I'm not entirely sure. It is possible they look ahead to Texas A&M because that is a huge game. Kentucky, pretty easy to overlook as bad as they've been playing. Kentucky finally got a win against FCS Murray State there to finally break that loss streak that they had. And this is going to be a big game for Kentucky at the very least, having to go to Texas with a chance to play spoiler, but I just don't think Kentucky is good enough, man. Will they cover a huge spread? Maybe. I mean, Texas is up from 19.5 to 20, 65% of tickets, 62% of the cash. I mean, it's possible they cover that number. BYU, Arizona State. I'm talking about this one, and this is another ranked matchup here. This is an interesting one. Gray Pilled, what's up, Jules? What's going on, man? Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Curtis, I'm trying to shout out everybody new that I see in the chat. We'll see. What's up, man? Put in Arch Manning for Texas. They're not going to do that, man. They're rolling right now. They're not going to do that. BYU, ASU, man. This is an interesting one. This is an interesting handicap, man. And BYU, they lost their first game. They lost their undefeated season. So the question is now, is that going to hang them over into this game against Arizona State? It's possible. I mean, BYU, they had chances to win that game against Kansas. I mentioned that game last week. The market was like heavily indicating on the Kansas side. It looked way too easy to take BYU there, but I wasn't sure I wanted to jump on Kansas because they were both in bad spots in that game. And BYU, like I said, they had chances to win that game a couple of different ways at the end, and they lost the game. Now they're going on the road to Arizona State, which is not a place where BYU plays very often. Looks like kind of a difficult spot, man. Even though BYU, they're still atop the Big 12. Everything is still in front of them. They can still make the playoff. I mean, they're still ranked, 14. So basically, if they win this game, they'll pretty much be back in the playoff picture. But I think they are anyway, as long as they win the Big 12. But that is kind of a big if now because BYU, I've been talking about how overrated they are. But, I mean, look at the Big 12, though, at the top here. BYU, Colorado, Arizona State. I don't know if any of those teams are actually really that good. I mean, I think BYU and Colorado both overrated. They face somewhat easy schedules, in my opinion. So I don't know, man. The Big 12, they're not like a powerhouse conference anymore, really. So we'll see. But BYU, they could be hung over from that being their first loss, or they might still show up focused because they're facing another ranked team. They need to stay atop the Big 12 if they want to maintain that position and be in the Big 12 championship. So not all is lost for them. So it's not a dream crusher scenario for BYU. And Arizona State, they're coming off a big win in last week, man. So they could potentially be in a letdown spot because I thought they were going to lose that game against Kansas State. I thought that was going to be a game where Kansas State was going to bounce back, show they're the better team. I mean, Kansas State's the more physical team over Arizona State, and that did not happen. Arizona State won the game, and I don't even think it was misleading, really. Well, it was a close game, I guess. Kansas State was -2 in turnovers. The stats were close otherwise, so the game wasn't really a 10-point win for Arizona State statistically, but it was a game where they at least played really close. They won the game, and now they are at home against BYU, and this is senior night for them. And Arizona State, they actually kind of need the win a little bit more because they're behind BYU in the standings. And who would have thought that Arizona State at this point in the season would actually have a shot to maybe make the Big 12 title game, which I think if they beat BYU, they'll leapfrog them in the standings, because I think head-to-head is probably the next tiebreaker after a conference record, I would assume. So I think that can happen for Arizona State. And like I said, I think BYU is a little bit overrated, and the odds makers are kind of telling you something with this line. Arizona State up from 3 to 3.5. So even though they're the team that's been lower ranked the entire year between them and BYU, I actually lean to the Arizona State side slightly here. I think it is kind of a difficult spot for BYU still for the reasons I mentioned a little while ago. 62% of tickets, 65% of the cash on Arizona State. Yeah, I mean, that's those are my thoughts on that one. I do lean that way slightly in that game towards the Arizona State side, very slightly there. Oh, whoops! I think I just what did I do? I just closed the scoreboard there. I wanted the scoreboard up, man. Grizzly, what's up, man? Big Ten and SEC are obviously far and away the two best conferences at this point. Yeah, and the ACC's probably third. Gabe, what's up, my man? Better off dead. That is right, man. All right. What else am I going to talk about? Let me see here. Was I going to talk about this Colorado-Kansas game? I mean, I guess. I'm trying to quick hit a bunch of these games here, man. Colorado, like I said, I think they're a little bit overhyped too. I mean, look at their schedule. I mean, who are the best teams that they played here? Kansas State and Nebraska, and they lost to both of them. I mean, okay. I mean, Colorado has really not been challenged much, and when they have been, they've lost. So I don't know what to think about this Colorado team. Really, Texas Tech, I mean, that was a decent win. That's probably their best win, though. They're coming off a win over Utah, and that Utah team, I mean, they're in the middle of a lost season. They lost Cam Rising. I mean, they just completely fell apart this season. Now Colorado has to go on the road to Kansas. But the problem is Kansas is probably in the worst spot. I mean, they just upset BYU, man. That was a huge game for Kansas. But Kansas, they have not been in like letdown mode for the last few weeks. I mean, they played Kansas State really tough, and you would think that coming out of that game, even though I think they came out of a bye off of that they were going to be in kind of a hangover spot after they played that huge rivalry game against Kansas State and played them really close, and they did not suffer a hangover. They beat Iowa State, another huge win for Kansas against a ranked team. Then they went to kind of an unfamiliar venue there, BYU, because BYU hasn't been in this conference very long, out into Elevation, and they went out there and beat BYU. So this Kansas team, this is crazy, man. So it's like, are they going to continue to put in another big effort, like another week in a row here? I think it's going to be difficult to do. I mean, that win over BYU was monumental, but this is a ranked Colorado team coming into their place, and it's their senior day. It's their last home game. So I don't think Kansas is going to be unmotivated here. It's just a matter of, are they going to have anything left in the tank? And Colorado still needs to win to stay atop the Big 12 or to stay in positioning to be in the Big 12 championship game. Again, like I said with Arizona State, who would expect that there's a shot for Colorado to be in the national playoff? Although I think if they do get there, they're going to get annihilated by some better team. But still, I mean, both of these teams have reason to show up in this game. And Kansas might be the team that's going to be the less rested of the two because they've had just a gauntlet recently and played game after game, step-up games. Kansas does also need this game if they want to try to get bowl eligible, though. So that's the other thing. I mean, they were I think they won a bowl last year, and it was the first time in a while that they'd won a bowl. And I think their goal is still to win a bowl this year, so we'll see if they can actually do it. But what am I even looking at here, man? There are just too many games up here. Am I looking at I just skipped by it. I skipped the Colorado-Kansas, just like the pussy. Colorado's up from 2 to 2.5 with 66% of tickets, 67% of the cash. So, I mean, slight market indication on the Colorado side, I guess, with a little bit of the cash coming in on their side. But, I mean, I guess I could see the argument for it, as I just pointed out. But the line also looks way too easy to lay the points with Colorado. Even though everybody saw what Kansas did last week, they're still... like they have like a 4-game their record is 4 games worse than Colorado's is right now. So, and Colorado's the ranked team, so it still looks really easy to take Colorado in that game. So I'm not going to do anything with that game, but just felt it was worth pointing out. I'll talk about Army Notre Dame because that's the other actual ranked matchup here. Number 19 against number 6. Army against Notre Dame, man. What was BYU Arizona State was 14 against 21. I forgot to point that out explicitly. Army, Notre Dame. Army is undefeated, man. I mean, I think you already know what I'm going to say here, man. Army, They've faced a really weak schedule. I mean, what can you say? They're in the American Athletic. I mean, what's the best opponent they've faced? Probably North Texas, I guess, in their most recent game. I mean, every other one of their opponents was unbelievably weak. This is crazy. I mean, you think Indiana's schedule is weak? Look at this crap. I mean, Army, okay, good luck against Notre Dame, in my opinion. I mean, Army, they came off their biggest win of the season to date against North Texas. So that was a big win. North Texas, pretty decent team. And then they went into a bye. And like I said with Indiana, man, these two undefeated teams going into byes, I don't think that bye is helpful when you're undefeated and you have the bye, even though it is late in the season and it will help you rest up a little bit. But you don't want to break your winning momentum, man. So I think that's going to disrupt your momentum a little bit, even though, yeah, of course, Army's going to be focused on Notre Dame. It is Notre Dame, the number 6 ranked team in the country. But I just don't think Army has the ability to do it. I don't think they have the weapons to do this, man. This is almost kind of a semi-home game for Army, though. This is a neutral site game in Yankee Stadium. This game is at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, and I believe West Point is somewhere in the state of New York, so it is closer to Army, but I don't think that's even going to matter, man. And Notre Dame, you know they travel. They have a huge fan base. I think both of these teams are kind of used to weather, so I don't think the weather is going to matter that much. It's going to be 44 with no precipitation. I think both of these teams will be fine with that, especially because both of these teams play decent defense and they both run the ball. Of course, Army runs the ball constantly because they're Army. I mean, they're a triple option attack. Notre Dame also is a run-first offense, so this is going to be a lot of running in this game, but I just think Notre Dame, I mean, they just have the way more physical players, man. They just have the stronger players. They're Notre Dame. What can you say? I mean, they have an easier time recruiting players. I mean, there are different recruiting restrictions on the service academies, which is why it's crazy to see Army undefeated this late in the season and Navy be undefeated for as long as they were this year. But Notre Dame, I'll talk about Navy in a second. By the way, as far as this game is concerned, Notre Dame's actually down from 17 to 14. They got 69% of the tickets on them, but 74% of the cash. So I think more of the cash is on the Notre Dame side. And I have heard some professionals say that Army is actually a public underdog in this game. And basically, whenever I see the cash percentage be more than the ticket percentage on the favorite, I kind of consider that to sort of be a situation where the public is kind of on the underdog. I think the public is looking at this line to some extent and thinking this is going to be a battle, and it just looks like it's too many points, but I don't agree. I mean, weren't they saying the same thing with that Navy game? Well, we see how that turned out. Notre Dame is just the better team, man, and Notre Dame, because they lost that game kind of inexplicably to Northern Illinois, even though Northern Illinois is a decent rushing attack as well and a decent defense. I think Notre Dame was kind of just high off of that win over Texas A&M to start the season. Probably overlooked Northern Illinois a little bit. But Notre Dame, because they have that one loss and they're not in a conference, they're independent, they want to make sure they get into the playoff here. They want to vie for the national title, man. So they know they can't lose another game here. So they're going to be focused. Both of these teams have reason to show up here. But like I was about to say, Notre Dame, look what happened when they face another triple option this year, man, in Navy. They beat them 51-14. And yeah, I know Navy had a ton of turnovers in this game. Navy was -6 in turnovers, but Notre Dame also outgained them by 150 yards. I mean, Notre Dame still outplayed them. Even if you take the turnovers out of the equation, Notre Dame still won this game, probably by margin, even without the turnovers. So, I mean, Notre Dame, they face triple option attacks a lot. They play Navy like every year pretty much. So they're used to facing triple option, and they know how to defend against it. And the thing about Navy that Army does not have is that Navy has like the wing T offense. So they actually have a spread offense where they do a triple option rushing attack, but they also throw the ball better than the other service academies do, which is a weird new style of offense for Navy there. So Navy actually has some ability to come back in games when they're behind because they can kind of throw it a little bit. Army does not have that. So if Army falls behind against the superior, more physical, stronger Notre Dame team, which is likely to happen here, they don't have the weapons to come back, man, because they're too ground focused. They run the ball too much. Army face a much, much weaker schedule than Notre Dame, as I already pointed out. I mean, Notre Dame has at least faced Navy already, Georgia Tech, although I think Georgia Tech was without King in that game, but still, Louisville. Texas A&M. I mean, I think even Virginia is probably better than any team. Probably even Stanford might be better than any team that Army has faced this year, man. That's how crazy this is. And by the way, I forgot to mention with Indiana, because I'm going to mention a similar thing with Army. Indiana has been a favorite in every game this year. Now they're a double-digit underdog against Ohio State. So that's, again, the odds makers telling you something. Indiana is not used to being in a situation like that where they're that highly ranked and they're also now in an underdog spot after being a favorite all year. Army is also not used to being in a situation like this. They're not used to being undefeated late in a season like this. And they've been a favorite, I think, by a touchdown or more in every one of their games so far. Now they're a double-digit underdog. So Army is not used to being in this position. They've faced all inferior teams so far this year. So Notre Dame would be my opinion in this one. Notre Dame would be the side. I think this is a repeat of that Navy game to some extent. I'm not even sure that those fumbles were necessarily that random in that game against Navy, because Notre Dame just hits you so hard that they can actually force fumbles when it's a mismatch to that extent. So I usually say these turnovers are basically fluky, but in this case, I don't really think so. So I like Notre Dame to cover in that one, just like I liked them in the Navy game as well. Kind of wish I had bet it, but I'm also not betting this one, so what can you do? Texas A&M, Auburn, I'm going to talk about. Texas A&M, I mean, they're sitting right behind Texas, top the SEC, so they need to continue to win, but they have that game against Texas up next, man. They're coming off an easy win over New Mexico State, but are they going to overlook Auburn going on the road to this Auburn team that only has one win in conference with Texas up ahead, which is a much bigger game? It's possible that Texas A&M does overlook Auburn here, man. I think this is a more significant look-ahead spot for Texas A&M than the one that Texas is in facing Kentucky. I mean, Texas is at home against Kentucky. Auburn, I think, is better than Kentucky, and I think they're being severely underrated. As I keep pointing out, I mean, Auburn, they've faced a difficult schedule. I mean, Oklahoma's not even really that bad. Georgia, Missouri's decent. They beat Kentucky. They lost to Vandy, who kind of surprised some people. And Arkansas, Cal aren't really that bad either. Auburn, that Oklahoma game, I was on Auburn in that game, and Auburn was up 11 in the fourth quarter, as I keep harping on, and they turned the ball over repeatedly. So, I mean, what can you really do about that? But this Auburn team, I think this win against UL Monroe will at least kind of help them get right here. And I know they have the big, what is it, the Iron Bowl? Is that what it's called between them and Alabama? I forget what it's called. I think that's what it is. And the Mississippi one is called the Egg Bowl, I think. I don't know where they come up with these rivalry names, but Auburn, yeah, I mean, that is a huge game against Alabama, but this is also a big game, and this is their final home game. This is senior night. It's at night. It's going to be a night environment. They got a ranked team, Texas A&M, coming to their place, and they can at least potentially spoil Texas A&M's season. Auburn could still win their last two games and become bowl eligible, although I don't think they're going to beat Alabama. But this game is actually a game where Auburn could actually win this game. And this line is only Texas A&M 2.5, and there's 67% of the tickets on them, 53% of the cash on Auburn. So the market is indicating on Auburn with the cash percentage on them, and this line looks way too easy to take Texas A&M. It's almost like the odds makers are begging you to take them. I mean, why would that be? Texas A&M has the way better record. They're sitting with a chance to make the SEC championship game here. Man, and they're the ranked team against an Auburn team that's just been losing every game. Basically, the public is only going to come in on one side on this one. And the odds makers are telling you this game is closer than it appears. So I would lean to taking the points there with Auburn. They might actually be able to win that game. Yeah, the Panhandle Pudding Bowl, that's what they call the Red River Shootout now, right? The Texas-Oklahoma, because both of those teams have panhandles. That's their rivalry game now. All right, what other games did I want to hit quickly here? Because I don't want this to go too crazy here before I get to my actual plays. As far as the ranked matchups are concerned, I think that was it. Maybe there were a couple other games I wanted to hit. I mean, I'm going to talk about my Boston College boys here for a second, just because I think North Carolina's in a bad spot. I like BC in this one. I mean, North Carolina, they just beat Wake Forest. That's a big win for two reasons, man. It's a big win because it's North Carolina rivalry game. Even though North Carolina's had the upper hand over Wake Forest recently, it's still a big rivalry game. Big win there for that reason, and also is their sixth win, so they became bowl eligible off of that win, even though, yeah, they're used to being in bowls most years. But still, I think that was their goal this year, especially after how poorly they were playing in the middle of the year. Winning 3 games in a row, that's big. Now they have to go up to BC, and it might be bad weather up here. I'm going to have to look in a second. And who do they have up after this? Oh, yeah, North Carolina State, their other in-state rival here. So this is a North Carolina sandwich, man. This is a nice pulled pork barbecue sandwich here. Barbecue pulled pork sandwich, man, with some nice vinegary barbecue sauce there, Carolina style. And they have to go up to BC in the middle of this. Yeah, I don't think North Carolina is going to be totally focused in this game, man. That would be my opinion. It doesn't look good to me for North Carolina. It's going to be 44 and raining as well. Do they really want to go up to Boston and play in cold, rainy weather in Chestnut Hill? Probably they do not want to. The Haitian Migration Bowl. Yeah, I don't know. Are there any Haitian players? I don't know. In Haiti, they basically only play soccer, I think, and I don't know. Is that it? I don't think they play baseball there. I don't know. What else do they play there? I'm not even sure. BC, I mean, yeah, they're coming off a nice performance against SMU where they played pretty tough. But BC, they're not going to overlook anybody at this point, man, because look what they have. Look where they're sitting at, man. They're sitting at 5-5. They just need one more win to become bowl eligible. They got 2 home games. They could win either one and become bowl eligible. They want to win this game. I mean, this is probably easier than the Pitt game for them. So I think BC is going to show up in this one. And BC, they've gone through some turmoil, man, where Castellanos, their quarterback who was there last year and this year, I believe he quit on the team. I think he got injured, and then he, decided to call it quits. I think he got injured in this game against Syracuse. They won the game anyway, and I think he left the team, and now they're going with Grayson James, I think is his name, and he's actually been pretty good so far this season. He looks like he's stepping it up, man. I mean, he's put up some decent yardage totals, even though his touchdown interception ratio is not that great. But against SMU, I mean, they're a good team, and he put up a decent stat line in that game. So he's off to the races. I mean, I think he's motivated. He wants to get his shot, man, because he was sitting there behind Castellanos, and now it's his turn. So I think BC is going to show up for that reason, too. They might rally around James if he wants to play. He wants to win. They're going to try to get this get into a bowl game here. So I do like BC in that one. I haven't played it, but that one's, as far as these games I've talked about, that one is closer to a play for me than most would be. UNC looks like they're up from 1 with juice to 2.5 with juice, though, with 54% of the cash on them and 67% of the tickets on BC. I don't know how BC is that public in this game. I don't know if I agree that those market percentages are even actually correct, but I don't know. But if you like BC, and I do, you can probably get them at +3. Yeah, it's the Rapapalooza. That's what they call all the rivalry games, man. So I do like BC in that game for those reasons. And I was going to talk about maybe some of these lower conference games real quick, just because a couple of these games are a little bit interesting as far as what's going on in these smaller conferences. I mean, James Madison is facing App State. James Madison kind of still needs to win, though, to try to get into the Sun Belt Championship. Although I don't know if it's possible, but I think it is, because they have to win this game against App State, and then they have Marshall up after this. So if they beat Marshall, I think they will be ahead of Marshall. As long as they also beat App State and they stay 1 game behind Marshall, I think beating Marshall will mean that they're tied record-wise, and James Madison will have the tiebreaker over them. So James Madison would actually get into the Sun Belt Championship still. So this game does mean something to them. They're coming off a win over Old Dominion that was probably closer than they wanted it to be. That was a close line. The Old Dominion is a pretty underrated team right now. They're a good defensive team. So that was a pretty tough game there. It is a second straight road game, though, for James Madison. And App State, I mean, they've had kind of a lost season. App State, I mean, they couldn't play Liberty because of the hurricane, and they are not going to replay the game. So they have 1 fewer opportunity to become bowl eligible. And this is their final home game, so it is senior day for App State. And they can play spoiler at the very least to JMU and make something out of this season. They do have Georgia Southern up next to, who's got one of the better records in the Sun Belt too. But App State, I mean, with JMU being so good last year and being one of the better teams in the conference this year, it is possible App State shows up here as well. But both teams have reason to show up in this game. I just thought it was interesting. JMU's up from 7 with juice to 7.5, 77% of tickets on them, but only 69% of the cash. So the market read would say to take the points with App State. And I can't really necessarily say that I disagree with it. I mean, it is possible that JMU gets caught looking ahead a little bit because this Marshall game is just so big. But they do need to win both games to try to get into that conference championship game there, though. So take from that what you will. South Alabama is in a bad spot. They are sitting at 5-5, though, so that's kind of the one problem I have here is they need one more win to become bowl eligible again. And I think they were in a bowl last year, and they absolutely annihilated somebody, right? Didn't they? If I remember correctly, they were up against probably whoever the weakest. I think it was Eastern Michigan. They were like the weakest team in the bowl slate last year, and they just squeaked into a bowl basically for the first time in a long time. And South Alabama crushed them, but they still want to get back to a bowl again, man. But they're coming off a big win over Louisiana, dealing them their first conference loss. Louisiana's a good Sun Belt team with probably the best QB in the Sun Belt, and South Alabama handled them. And they have Texas State up next in their final home game for South Alabama there, and that's another big game there where South Alabama actually still has kind of an outside shot to, I think, to be the top team in the Sun Belt West here because they beat Louisiana. They need Louisiana to lose another game, though, and they need to win twice. So I don't know that it's going to happen, though. I mean, this game does look like a sandwich spot kind of to me, though, between these two bigger opponents, but they still might be focused for those reasons I just stated, so I don't want to quite do it, but the line is also huge, and Southern Miss is just a bad team, man. But they got blown out 58-3 in their most recent game against Texas State. I think when you get blown out that badly, you're going to try to show up focused in the next game at the very least, and it is their senior day, their final home game, so Southern Miss, I mean, it kind of looks like the right side to me, but you'd be taking a huge amount of points. South Alabama up from 22.5 to 23.5, 96% of tickets, 97% of the cash on them. So at the very least, they're very, very public. So taking the points with Southern Miss looks somewhat appealing to me. And then Wisconsin, Nebraska. This one is interesting too. I know I'm going long here, man, in this video. What can I say? I like talking about this shit. Bug fights. What's up, man? Thanks for hanging out, everybody. You showed up late to my morning video or to this video. I haven't given out any of my actual plays yet here, though, although I am 1-2 already in the college football week. Wisconsin, I mean, look at what they're off of, man. They just played Oregon. They not only played Oregon, but they played them to the limit. And if you remember on my show last week, I said taking the points with Wisconsin was the side I recommended in that game. And I thought it was not the greatest spot for Oregon, and I almost played Wisconsin. I wish I did. I mean, Wisconsin, they were winning this game going into the fourth quarter. They held this Oregon offense to 6 points, no touchdowns going into the fourth quarter. They held them to 1 touchdown in the entire game, and the game was still tied with a couple of minutes left. If you're Wisconsin, I mean, that was a monster game for them. How do you get back up off the mat after that, man? If you're Wisconsin, you're going out on the road to Nebraska. I know Wisconsin, they don't want to have an embarrassing season here and not make a bowl. That's true. They got to win one more game to become bowl eligible. Yeah, but they might be able to do it in their final home game here against Minnesota, too. So, I mean, man, and that is kind of a rivalry game, too. So going out to Nebraska doesn't look like the greatest spot to me for Wisconsin, man. Coming off that difficult a game, and they faced 3 grueling defenses in a row, man. Penn State, Iowa, Oregon. Northwestern's defense isn't even that bad either. So Wisconsin, I mean, they could be a pretty beat-up team coming into this game against Nebraska, man. And Nebraska, they're also sitting at 5-5. They want to make a bowl, even though I know they were ranked to start the season. But did they really have aspirations that were that lofty after not being that great a program recently? Probably not. I think they want to make a bowl. And they're coming off a bunch of losses in a row. They did play USC tough on the road in their last game. Yeah, that's true. And they were a 9.5-point underdog, and they covered. But, I mean, this is Wisconsin coming into their place. This is their final home game, senior day for them. It always is a little bit of an extra motivator there. If I'm going to fade a team on senior day, which, by the way, I am in one of my games, it better be a good spot to do it, man, if I'm going to fade a team on senior day. So it is a heavy motivator. So I like the Nebraska side in this one, but I'm not going to quite get there with it. But I think Wisconsin's in a very difficult spot off of that. But the market looks to be indicating against it, with Nebraska now from 2.5 to 1, 53% of tickets, 51% of the cash on Nebraska. So they look like they're a little bit of an anti-public team here. And I don't know, man. We'll see if Raiola there, Patrick Mahomes' doppelganger there, can actually play like it in this game and actually win. But I don't agree with the market read in that one. I think Wisconsin's in a pretty difficult spot there, in my opinion. And it looks like UNLV has taken the lead by more than the point spread now. And it looks like this game is still going to stay under that crazy high total, though. So I said the under was the best way to look in this game on my morning show. So, man, I do hate it when my leans get there, though. Your local senior day? Why, you want to go like bang some old ladies, Will? What are you talking about? The Nebraska Knickers, yeah. The Knickerbockers, I don't know. Charles, I will get some sleep in a little while, man. Have a good night as well. I'm going to have multiple late nights in a row, man. Nate, oh my God. You want me to talk about all these? I already talked about Colorado, Texas A&M. Didn't agree with either of those. I don't know if I'm going to talk about every one of those, but I'll talk about Marshall because it is interesting. I don't know about Western Kentucky. I probably disagree with most of those plays, though, if I'm being completely honest. Let me see here. Let me see. What else is I going to talk about here? Stanford, Cal. I mean, there's so many games to talk about here, man. Stanford, they're coming off a massive upset, dude. I was on that game. Huge upset. That was my biggest money line win of the year, I think, on Stanford. I thought it was a really bad spot for Louisville, and Stanford got to host them. It was a bad spot for Louisville going out to the Pacific Coast, and I think it was a sandwich spot for them. Stanford is a massive 20.5-point underdog. They won the game outright. That's like win of the year type of stuff, man. I know this is a rivalry between Stanford and Cal, so maybe they'll still be motivated for that reason, but that was a huge win coming off that win over Louisville like that. That was your senior night as well, or senior day. How do you turn around and play, even though I know it's Cal? Do you really get excited to play Cal? I don't know, maybe because you can spoil your rival's shot at a bowl game, maybe. So maybe they'll still show up. So I don't want to actually do it and play Cal here, but man, it doesn't look like a good spot there. Cal, on the other hand, they lost as a huge favorite. This Cal team is flying under the radar, man. They were a 10.5-point favorite, even though they're 5-5 now, and Syracuse is 7-3. Oddmaker's telling you that Cal was the better team here. Cal has faced somewhat of a difficult schedule, man. I mean, they beat Auburn, losing on the road to Florida State. I mean, it was an unfamiliar environment. It's still not that easy. They faced, a lot of decent teams here, really. Miami should have beaten them. That was a game I was on, Cal. Pitt, not easy either on the road. Not a very easy schedule for Cal. They do have SMU up next, but I think off of that loss, and this now being their final home game, senior day for them, and it's their rivalry game against Stanford, man. So I think Cal actually has more reason to show up in this game than Stanford does. So I would look to the Cal side there. But Cal, they're up from 14 to 14.5, and they are public because Stanford has just been so bad. Even though Cal, I think, is an undervalued commodity here typically, the public is still coming in on them because Stanford is so awful. 72% of the tickets, 69% of the cash on Cal. So public with less of the cash on them. So I'm not going to jump in and try to lay it with Cal there. Sandwich needs to go mainstream. I mean, it is a Marco D'Angelo-ism at the very least. He's one of the situational handicappers I follow the most closely. What else am I going to talk about here? Oh, my God, so many games. East Carolina, North Texas. This one was interesting to me too, man, because East Carolina just became bowl eligible. They just got their 6th win, winning 3 games in a row against all bad teams. Temple, Florida Atlantic, Tulsa. They're bowl eligible now. None of those wins are impressive at all. Now they're facing a 2nd straight road game. And who do they have up after this North Texas game? Oh, yeah, they have Navy. Navy was ranked throughout the season. They might be looking ahead to that. I mean, that's also their final home game against Navy, and it's going to be on ESPN. So that is maybe a reason for East Carolina to look ahead. They might overlook North Texas, even though North Texas has played decently. North Texas sitting at 2-4 in conference now, and East Carolina 4-2. Yeah, East Carolina could overlook them, but North Texas, I think, has faced a more difficult schedule, man. I mean, they face Texas Tech, Memphis, Tulane is good, Army. I don't know how many of those teams East Carolina also faced. I think they did also face, they didn't face Tulane. Yeah, so North Texas has faced a more difficult schedule, man, and they're coming off losing to UTSA pretty badly on the road there, and I think that was because they were coming off that tough game against Army, so they were kind of in a hangover spot there, and this is North Texas's final home game, and they're sitting at 5-5, and they want to make a bowl, man. I mean, that would be a pretty big deal for their program. So they're going to be focused on this, even though there is the chance that they beat Temple as well, because Temple is pretty bad. But I think their sights are set on this game, man. So I like North Texas in this game, and I think maybe they're being a little bit undervalued too. Like East Carolina is being lined as the better team, and I'm not sure that they really are. North Texas sitting at 2.5, up to 2.5 with juice, with 57% of tickets on them, but 54% of the cash on the East Carolina side. So I'm disagreeing with the market read in that one. What can you do? I like the North Texas side in that one. I'm not playing it, but if I were to look to play that game, that would be the way that I would look in that one. Man. So many games. All right, Nate, I'm going to talk about what game do I want to... Oh, I'll talk about Marshall. I was probably going to talk about this game anyway. Marshall, yeah, I mean, they're sitting atop the Sun Belt East here, yeah. But they're facing Old Dominion on the road here, and they have James Madison up next on the road. So they're coming off their senior night, so that's always a big game, even though Coastal Carolina's not that good. They won on senior day there. I don't think that was like an isolated midweek game or anything like that. It wasn't. It was on Saturday, so it wasn't one of those games. But now they're going on the road to Old Dominion. They don't have any home games left in their final game is what matters, man, because think about this. Marshall, they can lose this game and JMU can win, and Marshall still just has to beat JMU next week, and they're going to stay ahead of them, although they do have to worry about Georgia Southern as well. Actually, yeah, that's true. And Marshall lost to Georgia Southern. So actually, Marshall, if they were to lose this game and Georgia Southern were to win, then Marshall would... Well, Marshall still isn't in that much trouble because all they care about is... well, they need to win the East, and the team from the East and the team from the West get in, actually. So what am I saying? Yeah, so Marshall does kind of still need to win this game, I guess. But this is a much bigger game up next against JMU, man. I mean, that's probably going to be the game that's going to decide... who takes the East here in the Sun Belt pretty much. So they might overlook Old Dominion a little bit, man. Old Dominion sitting at 3-3, 4-6. There's an outside chance they make a bowl if they win these final two games here. And Arkansas State, I mean, they're okay, but I mean, these games are, it's not out of the question that they win both these games, let's just say. And this is their final home game for Old Dominion. As I keep saying, I think Old Dominion's a little bit undervalued here, man. I think the spot's a little bit better for them, even though they are coming off a tough game against James Madison where they played really close against JMU. So that was a big game for them, and they fell short. And Old Dominion had some chances, but they did fall behind, well, with a little bit to go. I guess they were still within one score pretty late in the game, actually, late into the fourth quarter. So, yeah, it was a big game for them, but I still would slightly lean to the Old Dominion side. I think they're the team that's being a little bit undervalued. They're up from 1 to 2.5 here as well. So oddsmakers telling you that despite what the records look like, Old Dominion is not that much worse of a team than Marshall is. And it's actually really close. I actually think Old Dominion might actually be the better team. I think they're the better defense at the very least. They got 62% of the cash on them, but 81% of the tickets. And with the line moving up on them from 1.5 to 2.5 with heavy juice towards the 3. A lot of market indicators on the Old Dominion side, so I like the Old Dominion side in that one. Sorry, Charles. That's just that's the way it is. And then, man, so many fucking games to talk about. Western Kentucky, I'll give you that one too. I don't know if I want to talk about the other games because they're so ugly, but Western Kentucky and Liberty, I mean, this is an interesting game at the very least. Western Kentucky, they're potentially going to be able to make the Conference USA championship because it's basically between them, Sam Houston, and Jacksonville State at this point. And Sam Houston, I think, is slightly worse than those other two teams. Western Kentucky has the tiebreaker against Sam Houston already. They play Liberty now, but the problem with this is that Jacksonville State is their next opponent, man. So even though I know Liberty is behind, like right behind them in the standings, this Jacksonville State game is huge, man. So, yeah, they're probably going to need to win both these games because they need to stay ahead of Sam Houston. They do have the tiebreaker against Sam Houston. This is a road game going to Liberty. So it is possibly a look-ahead spot with Jacksonville State being a huge game up next, but they're also coming off an embarrassing loss as a double-digit favorite at home against Louisiana Tech. I mean, I don't know if there's really much excusing a loss like that. I don't know how Western Kentucky played that badly against Louisiana Tech, and with a guy like Veltkamp there, a quarterback. He's a pretty good quarterback, man. I don't know how this Western Kentucky offense. He didn't get hurt or anything, right? No, he didn't. So I don't know how this offense was so anemic, even though Louisiana Tech's defense has been all right. But Western Kentucky might still be focused for that reason and because Liberty is right behind them. But I don't know if I love it. And Liberty, I mean, I don't think they really have a chance to make the conference championship at this point, but I think they're still going to play out the stretch here. And this is their final home game, so it's senior day for them. And they're coming off a close call against UMass, which should have been a way easier win for them. So both of these teams are coming off embarrassing performances. I mean, Liberty did win the game, but they were a 16.5-point favorite against a really bad UMass team. Kind of a weird spot for Liberty, having to go up to UMass there. Pretty much a look-ahead spot there, so I think they got caught looking ahead to this game. That would be my opinion. They were -2 in turnovers in that game too, so that didn't help either. So they're also in a bounce-back spot, and this is their final home game, and it's one of the bigger teams in the conference coming into their place. So I lean to the Liberty side of this one. That would be my opinion there. What am I saying? No. Give me... I'm just trying to search for it, man. Liberty's up from pick'em to 1. 59% of the tickets on Western Kentucky, 60% of the cash on the Liberty side. So the market is indicating on the Liberty side as well. In agreement with me. So, yeah, I mean, I lean to Liberty in that one for those reasons. It's not the strongest play for me, but that would be the way that I would look in that one. And then I'm going to talk about Kansas State, wherever they're at. Kansas State, this could be a dream crusher scenario for Kansas State, man. I mean, they were rolling along as a one-loss team with that loss, I mean, being a little bit misleading at the very least because of all the turnovers against BYU. I won on BYU in that one. Bad spot also for Kansas State there. Before we knew that Oklahoma State and Arizona sucked ass. But now Kansas, I mean, these wins kind of look somewhat less impressive, and now they lost 2 games in a row, and they just lost at home in what I thought was a bounce-back spot against Arizona State. I don't know, man. I think Kansas State, I think that's the dream crusher for them. That was their 3rd loss. They're done now. I mean, they're not going to make the Big 12 championship game. They're going to make a bowl, but, I mean, that's about it. I mean, they're at 7 wins now. I mean, they have a bigger game up next, Iowa State, so maybe they'll be looking ahead to that. This is their final home game, senior night, but when your dreams have been crushed like that, I mean, they needed to win against Arizona State, and they would still be alive. If they had done that, they'd be sitting tied with Arizona State, I think, and with the tiebreaker, so they'd be ahead of them. So that was a massive loss that pretty much ended their season, man. So I think they could be in dream crusher mode here. I think Kansas State might not be fully focused here. In Cincinnati, they only need one more win to become bowl eligible, man. They're coming off a pretty ugly loss, even though it was to a pretty decent Iowa State team last week. 3 losses in a row. I mean, they were 5-2 at one point. All they needed to do was win one more game, and they haven't done it yet. And they're going to host TCU next, so there's a decent chance they're still going to do it. But, man, I mean, I lean to the Cincinnati in this one. Kansas State's up from 9-9 with juice, 73% of tickets, 60% of the cash on them. So they're a little bit less, they're getting less of the cash than the tickets, and they are public, so they could be in dream crusher mode. I would take the points with Cincinnati if I was going to play that one. What's up, Crimson? You made 35,000 betting against me. All right, I don't know which games you were betting against me on, but I've won over the course of multiple decades at this point. So even though I'm definitely having a down year, but I am still up on the year though. It's just been not a very good year for me. And I'm going to talk about Nevada Air Force here. Nevada, I think they're in a bad spot, man, even though, yes, this is their final home game. This is one of those final home games where I might say you want to look to go against that home team in their senior night, man. Even though I know this is a night game, it's big, it's senior night, but is it that big? They do have a bye, so that bye might actually help them because they went into that bye having lost 4 straight games, so that might help them maybe end that losing momentum, and maybe they'll show up for this game, maybe. That maybe is why I'm not going to quite get there with Air Force. So this is one of the closest to being a play for me, man, would be taking the points with Air Force. I'm close to doing it. This was probably the first game that I left off my card, man. This was, out of the games I'm not playing, this is the closest one to being a play for me. Yeah, downs here. Nevada, I mean, that last game going into the bye, they played a real step-up game at Boise State, man, and they came to within 7 as a 23.5-point underdog. They were kind of in this game, man, and they were within 7 going into the fourth quarter, although they did give up a touchdown pretty early in the fourth quarter, so they were down 2 scores with a lot of time left, and they scored a touchdown late, so it wasn't really like they almost won the game, but they still put in a pretty big effort in that game. And then, whoops, I just closed it. Whoops. And then coming off of that game, now they have to face this Air Force team that's just been down all year. And who do they have up next? Yeah, they have their rivalry game, which is another ranked opponent in UNLV. That's a huge rivalry between Nevada and UNLV. In-state rivalry where Nevada is now the little brother of the two right now, as the tables have turned, and UNLV is actually the better of the two teams, which was not the case for a long stretch of time there. So it's possible Nevada overlooks Air Force. And the other thing about Air Force is Air Force runs a triple option attack. They don't see a lot of triple option, man. They haven't faced Navy. They haven't faced Army in here. So this does look like a difficult spot to me, even though it is their final home game. It is senior night for them. I would take the points with Air Force in this one. It is down from 4.5 to 3. I mean, the 3 is still a decent number, in my opinion, on Air Force in that situation. 65% of tickets are on Air Force, but 68% of the cash. So it looks like more of the money is on Air Force, and the line has moved that way. So I would lean to Air Force in that one. Nate, what else did you say you have? You have Illinois. Illinois at Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers sitting at 1.5, up to 1.5 with juice. 82% of the cash on Illinois. 65% of tickets on Illinois. So it looks like more of the cash is on Illinois. Illinois is, still the ranked team, barely. But I've been talking about how bad I think Illinois is. I think they suck. Illinois, they're sitting at 7-3. So what else do they really have to play for, man? I mean, they just upset Michigan State. That was a big win, pretty much, against Michigan State, I think Michigan State is maybe not even the worst team out of the two. I mean, the odds makers are telling you that Michigan State is actually the better team there, because Illinois was down to only laying 1.5 points at home in that game. They won the game fairly easily, but statistically it wasn't that lopsided, so I don't know how the final score wound up being as lopsided as it was. Michigan State maybe just not converting drives or whatever. That was Illinois' final home game, man. They don't have any home games left. Now they have to go to the East Coast to play an early start time game against Rutgers. And then with Northwestern up to finish the season, I mean, I don't know. Are they really going to be focused here? I mean, Illinois, what do they have left to play for here? They're going to be in some bowl. I mean, that's pretty much what you have to say about Illinois. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the Big Ten title game. So what do they really have to look forward to? Not a lot. Rutgers, on the other hand, they did just become bowl eligible as well. So that's a big win for them. They went to Maryland, and they did beat Maryland to become bowl eligible. But this is Rutgers' final home game here. So I don't know if I would really want to fade Rutgers in this spot. I think Illinois is just continuing to be overrated here. So I don't know what to think about this. It looks like there may be slight more reason for Rutgers to be motivated in that one. So I don't really agree with that. +2 versus Chris. You mean are the 2 her titties? I don't know, man. I mean that's a +2 that I am fine with taking, or fine with laying. I don't know which one of those phrases makes more sense. I don't know. UNLV is trash. Nah, they're not trash, man. Not this year. I mean, they're a pretty good team, man. They're going to be in a decent bowl this year at the very least. I think they're probably going to be, they're headed to the Mountain West Championship game probably, right, against Boise. It looks like, so that'll probably be an interesting matchup there. Nate, what else did you have? Am I really going to talk about every one of your games here? The only one I haven't talked about at this point, I think, is Georgia Southern. Well, and I guess Duke, so fuck it. I guess I'll talk about them. Georgia Southern against Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is down from 3 to 2.5. 62% of the tickets, but 80% of the cash on them. So the line has moved against Coastal slightly, but it looks like the cash percentage is on Coastal. What do I think about this game? I don't know, because I did just look at this game a little while ago. Georgia Southern, they're still fighting to get into the Sun Belt Championship. They need to somehow overtake Marshall, but they did beat Marshall, so they have the tiebreaker against Marshall, so that's pretty big for them. So they need to win, and Marshall needs to lose somehow. So Georgia Southern, yeah, I mean, they're still motivated for that reason because they do need to, if they want to get into the Sun Belt title game, they do need to still win games. They became bowl eligible 2 games ago. Pretty big win over Southern Alabama. It was not a bad team. And I think they kind of were in a letdown spot after that. Losing to Troy, that's an ugly loss. I mean, Georgia Southern was a 7.5-point favorite. They should not have lost that game to Troy. So does that mean they're going to be in a bounce back spot? Yeah. I mean, I could see the argument for Georgia Southern being motivated in that game. Coastal, they just lost to Marshall. I mean, that's a tough game as well. And I'm not looking at what the bye scenario is for these teams, but for Georgia Southern, they don't have one. For Coastal, I don't know. What just happened here? Oh, man. I thought my internet had gone out again. That would suck. Coastal, did they have a bye last week? I don't know. No, they did not. So they are coming off a big game, a loss to Marshall, but Coastal, this is their final home game, and they're sitting at 5 wins. So again, if their goal is to become bowl eligible, they are still going to show up for a game like this. It's senior day, last home game, and they're still playing for bowl eligibility. So I'm not sure I would want to fade Coastal there. Both teams do have reason to be motivated there. So I'm not going to get involved. Take from that what you will, but I might actually slightly lean to Coastal, really just given the fact that they have more of the cash percentage on them, and it's bowl eligibility for them, and they have a chance to play spoiler for Georgia Southern. I think Georgia Southern maybe slightly overrated, as the odds makers are telling you that these teams are almost even though Georgia Southern has the slightly better record. So I don't know. That's the way I look at that one. And then Duke, I'm covering almost every game, man. You guys are lucky, but I'm doing it kind of rapid fire. Virginia Tech up from 2.5 to 3 on the road with 89% of the cash on them and 56% of tickets on Duke. That looks like some heavy market indicators on Virginia Tech, man. I've been saying Duke is overrated all year. And because, I mean, you're looking at the line has moved up on Virginia Tech a little bit, and it looks like you have almost a pros versus Joes, where it looks like the Joes are kind of coming in, taking Duke as a public underdog, and that's not really where you want to ever go with a game. And it looks like a huge percentage of the cash is on the Virginia Tech side. So it looks like indicators on the Virginia Tech side there. Virginia Tech, they're coming off kind of a tough game where they lost to Clemson. I mean, that's always a step-up game when you play Clemson, but they are coming out of a bye now. And so they went into that bye on 2 losses. So Virginia Tech, I mean, that bye could help maybe halt that losing momentum for them. And the thing about Virginia Tech is they're still playing for bowl eligibility. I know they have Virginia up next. As I mentioned with Virginia, that is a big rivalry game, but I think it means more to Virginia right now because Virginia Tech has been considered to be the better program for quite a while. So Virginia Tech might not have as much of a reason to look ahead to that Virginia game there. That bye might help end their losing momentum, even though that was a tough game. Step-up game against Clemson. I don't know how close that game really was down the stretch, though. It looks like it wasn't that close coming down the stretch. Let me see. What was the score? No, I mean, Virginia Tech was down 17 in the final 2 minutes, so it's not like that was close to them winning the game or anything like that. So I think that bye will help them halt that losing momentum. They still need one more win to become bowl eligible, so if they care about that, which I think they do. That Syracuse game, it looks like Drones got hurt or something and didn't play. And it looks like he's back, so that is going to be big for Virginia Tech if he is playing because he is their starting quarterback, and that bye might help him get healthy or whatever the case is there. If he's injured or whatever, that might help him get right as well. Duke, I mean, does Duke really have that much of a reason to show up in this game? I mean, it is their senior day, senior night, fine. So maybe that's reason enough to show up because they're going to be playing a night game in front of the home crowd. It's their final home game, sure, but they're coming off a big rivalry win over NC State. So they went into the bye week. They had a bye week last week too, and they went into it on a good note, man, beating NC State. So I think that bye is not going to help them, man, because you go into a bye on a good note like that, what do you have to fix? And that was against one of your in-state rivals in NC State on the road. And yeah, I know that this is senior day for them, but they also have Wake Forest up next, which is also another North Carolina rival, even though I guess that game doesn't matter as much as playing North Carolina and NC State does. But I don't really love the Duke side at all here. Really, I don't like the Duke. I don't like how the situation sets up for them. And I think Duke's overrated, man. As I've been saying all year, when they were undefeated here at 5-0, I went against them in this Georgia Tech game, and they finally got caught. Because, I mean, look at these wins. Elon, Northwestern, UConn, although we knew UConn's pretty competitive now, really. Middle Tennessee, I mean, come on. North Carolina, I mean, they're a mediocre team. It doesn't really play defense. Florida State was another one of their wins, and NC State's kind of down this year, too. Duke, not really an impressive resume, dude. So the odds makers are telling you Virginia Tech's the better team here, too. So a line like that, you're seeing Virginia Tech is a 5-5 team, is a 3-point favorite over a 7-3 home team. That line is telling you something, man. That line looks very suspect. Odds makers are telling you Virginia Tech is the better team, and somewhat significantly so. And I think the spot sets up better for them. So I would look to the Virginia Tech side in that one. I apologize, Nate. I disagree with most of your plays, if not all of them. My apologies for that. Bostonians pronouncing bowl like Boyle. How do we pronounce bowl? I don't even know. Bowl? I have no idea. Yeah, bowl. Texan bowl. Bye, JC. Bye, Nate. Oh, bye to Nate. JC just said bye to Nate. All right. I thought you both were leaving. All right. We'll get to my actual plays now as we're over an hour into the video. Let's do it. First play up is Northwestern plus 10. I mean, you can kind of guess what my plays are going to be because I've talked about almost every other game here. And this is a game where, yeah, guess what? I'm fading a team that's in, and we can get 10.5 on this one now, too, it looks like. So we could say it's at 10.5. I haven't played this one yet because Michigan's public, so I expect the line to still be there. They're down from 13, it looks like. I don't know when it was 13, though. Down to 10.5. 61% of the tickets, 59% of the cash. And I don't think I'm going in order of how these games are on the schedule or on the betting sheet. I just ordered them in a particular way in in the banners here, but whatever. So I like Northwestern here, man. 61% of the tickets are on Michigan, 59% of the cash. So they're a bit public, and they have less of the cash. The line looks to be moving against them a little bit. And look at this total, down from 37.5 to 36, and you're taking 10.5 points with Northwestern. I know their offense sucks, but one thing that doesn't suck is their defense. And Michigan's offense is not that much better, man. This Michigan offense is not very potent. Both of these teams are defense first. So in a game like this, when you're getting that many points with a total that's that low, those points are a little bit more valuable, man, just because the total is so low and it's expected to be such a low-scoring game. Taking all those points looks a little bit more enticing there. Those points are worth a little bit more when you do that, man. And I like this. And yes, I said, I know I'm going against a team that is playing on their senior day. I know. That is Michigan. They're playing in the big house. I'm aware of this. But here's the thing about Michigan. And yes, I'm aware that they're sitting at 5 wins and they need one more win to become bowl eligible. I know that as well. But do you really think Michigan cares about making some crap bowl, being a 6-win team? And they could still, by the way, they could still win this game and not cover. So we could still get the cover, and Michigan could still get the bowl eligibility. They could just win the game by less than 10, and both will happen. So I still don't think they're going to be totally focused on Northwestern here, man. When you're Michigan, I mean, how could you be that focused on a bad Northwestern team? You had higher aspirations, man. Michigan, they won the national championship last year, and I know this is a different team. They don't have Harbaugh anymore. They don't have those guys who are on that team anymore, but you had higher aspirations than getting into a low-tier, like, early bowl game. I mean, this is a Michigan program that always expects to be a national title contender, basically, and they fell way short of that goal this year. They were highly ranked to start the season, too. So I don't think they're going to care that much about getting into some garbage bowl. And even if they're 5-7, if there's a bowl slot available, because they're Michigan and they have such a huge fan base, if they really want to be in a bowl, they might even be able to petition to get into one. So whatever. And look at what they're coming off of, even though, yes, I know they had a bye mixed in here, so maybe that bye will help them a little bit get over having 2 losses in a row. But look at what they did, man. The game right before that bye, this was one of their biggest games of the year. They went into Indiana as a 14.5-point underdog and played them close for pretty much the whole game. They were within 1 score for basically almost the entire game. They fell behind by 2 scores in the middle of the game there. Got back to within 1 score, and then with 9.5 minutes left, they cut it to 2, and they missed a 2-point conversion that could have potentially tied the game. And then they lost on they gave up a field goal at the end and wound up losing by 5. That is a brutal way to lose for Michigan, man. And now, who do they have up next, by the way? Oh, yeah, because you think they're going to be focused on the Northwestern game senior day just because they might be able to win this game and get into some garbage bowl? No. I think what they're going to be focused on is this Ohio State game next week. That is the big rival, even though I know they're not going to expect to go into Ohio State and beat them. They won't. Ohio State will be a huge favorite in that game. But Michigan, imagine if they go into that game and they have a chance to spoil Ohio State's season, and that is their big rivalry game. Yeah, I think that's the game they're going to be focused on. I think this is a sandwich spot, even though there is a bye mixed in there. And I would like it better if Michigan did not have that bye in there that may help halt their losing momentum a little bit and get rested a little bit. But I don't care that much, man. They're coming off that game where they almost pulled off the upset against Indiana. They played a tough game against Oregon the game before that. They played Michigan State in a big rivalry the game before that. They faced a bunch of big games in a row. This is a bunch of big games in a row. This is like the down spot in their schedule. Even though they are sitting at 5 wins and it is senior day, I don't think it matters that much to them. And Northwestern, there's still an outside chance they might be able to come bowl eligible. I think they overperformed last year because Fitzgerald got fired and they really just rallied around the coach being fired. Like Northwestern does have a lot of returning starters from that team, but it has not panned out this year. I think they overperformed last year, but they do have a home game up next, and they are facing a Michigan team here that's in a bad spot at the very least. So I think Northwestern is still going to at least show up in games like this when bowl eligibility is not completely out of the question at the very least. And Michigan is a huge opponent, man. I mean, this is their biggest opponent left on their schedule. I mean, you get to go into the big house and play the returning national champs, even though they're down this year. I think that's reason for Northwestern to show up focused in this game. And they're coming off, yeah, they played Ohio State last week, so they did play last week, but that game was never close. So was that really a game where they put in a full effort? No, not really. I don't think they expected to have any shot at beating Ohio State there. They may have a shot to hang in this game because the total is so low. So give me Northwestern plus 10 or 10.5 or whatever it's gonna be there. The Sandwich Bowl, yeah. The early garbage bowl games matter. They matter to teams that don't make bowls very often, but not to teams like Michigan, man. Teams that are expected to be vying for it, at the very least, like the conference title, does not matter as much to them. Next up is maybe an even uglier one, Connecticut, UConn plus 10.5. I'm going to grab the points with UConn in this one, man. This Connecticut team, I think, is kind of flying under the radar. Where are they at here? They're getting 10 now. I think there's still 10.5s out there. Syracuse is very public here, down from 10.5 to 10, 67% of tickets, 54% of the cash. So you have Syracuse looking pretty public with less of the cash on them and the line moving against them. This total, yeah, I know it's a little higher at 54. Syracuse does have a pretty decent offense with McCord there, but UConn does play decent defense, and I think they are flying under the radar a little bit here. Is this game actually up earlier? I don't know if it is or if it isn't. It is. So this game is actually before the other game I talked about, so my apologies. This game is actually at noon, and this is mostly a play against Syracuse, man. I mean, Syracuse, they have 3 losses. They're not going to make the ACC championship game. They have 7 wins. They're already in a bowl. So what do they really have to play for here? Not a lot. And this is not even their senior night, or senior day here. They're playing an out-of-conference game. They're playing an independent, like, lower-tier team here in UConn. So are they really going to be focused on UConn? And look what they did last week. They went out to that underrated Cal team, which I mentioned a little while ago, 10.5-point underdog, and they upset Cal. I mean, that's a big win for Syracuse. They had to go out to the Pacific Coast. They beat Cal. They did outplay them, too, even though they were also +2 in turnovers. They outgained them as well, but the turnover battle helped them as well. Now they're coming back cross-country, and I think they don't have any time off. I think that was last week. It was. So now they're coming back from the Pacific Coast after a big upset win. They're facing UConn. And who do they have up next? Oh, yeah, it's senior day against Miami, and they have a chance to maybe knock Miami out of the playoff. Yeah, Syracuse is going to show up for that game. I don't think they're going to show up for this game against UConn. there isn't much of a reason for them to. For UConn, at the very least, the reason that they would show up here, even though, yes, they're already bowl eligible, they have 7 wins. So UConn's going to be in a bowl, which is pretty big for them. They don't make bowls very often, although they did, I think, 2 years ago. And they didn't cover for me in that bowl, by the way, against Marshall. I think they lost by 14 as a 10.5-point underdog. That sucked in a pretty low-scoring game. But UConn, yeah, they haven't faced a difficult schedule, really. They got blown out by Maryland, but they played competitively against Duke, only losing by 5. They played against Wake, and that was on the road. They played against Wake Forest and played them to within 3. So this UConn team, I mean, they've been decently competitive at the very least. I mean, their offense is not like totally incapable of putting up points here. And Syracuse, I don't think is the greatest defensive team either. And but again, UConn, they also do have a bye in here, so does that worry me a little bit? I don't know, maybe because they went into the bye on 3 straight wins. But still, I mean, I think you're going to be focused on Syracuse. I mean, UConn, they don't have any home games left. Out of these games remaining on their schedule, I mean, yeah, this is the game they're going to be focused on. They're playing an ACC team in Syracuse, and they have a chance to play well against one of the big boys there in Syracuse. Yeah, I think they're going to want to play well there. And UConn, this game against UAB, I mean, this was not great for UConn. This is how they went into the bye. They were 7.5-point favorite against UAB, and they almost lost the game. They were losing in the 4th quarter and still only winning by 1 with a couple of minutes left. So I think they might use the bye to actually try to fix some things because that game wasn't actually good. Even though they won, it looks like they went into the bye on a high note, but not really when they almost lost to an inferior team to them like that. So for all those reasons, I actually expect focus out of UConn, and the market looks to be in agreement with it. So UConn plus the points. Yeah, the ball knickers, yeah. And finally, a game I also like quite a bit, Louisville, -7.5, man. We're going to go to this Louisville team who I was talking about how they were dead a couple weeks ago, and I've played against them, I think, at least once this year. But I think we finally got a spot where they're facing an equally dead, if not more dead team in Pittsburgh, and Louisville is laying points against them, which kind of looks suspicious, and it looks like the market is indicating on them. They're down from 8 to 7.5, but they have 74% of tickets on them and 81% of the cash on them. So it looks like the cash discrepancy is on Louisville. So I don't really consider them to be a public favorite in this one with more of the cash being on them. And if this line drops further, it's possible you can even lay 7 on them. So there might not be a reason to lay the 7.5 right now because 7.5, 8, there's like no difference between those two. So if you think it might actually drop to 7 on Louisville, you might be able to wait here. But I like the Louisville side, and this game is at 4 in the afternoon, so I don't have any college night games here. Louisville, yeah, I mean, their season has been over for a while now. I think they've come to terms with it. I mean, they lost that Miami game, and then I took BC against them, and BC should have won the game. BC was blowing them out of the building, really, but Louisville showed me something by coming back against BC in that one, and then they went out to Clemson, and they won against Clemson. And then what did Louisville do last week? I mentioned the game. I played Stanford last week. Louisville had to go out to the Pacific Coast, play Stanford, and they were a 20.5-point favorite against Stanford and lost the game outright. But Louisville was off beating Clemson, man. I mean, that was like a big win of the year type of win there, beating Clemson. I don't think they were focused at all against Stanford and having to travel out to the Pacific Coast for, I think, what was a night game too. That's not easy to do at all, man. I don't know. It was an afternoon game. My apologies. But still, that's not an easy thing to do. And with Pitt up next, which is a team that's been one of the better teams in the ACC pretty much all year, even though now they've fallen down, of course. But still, this is a much bigger game against Pitt, and it's senior day for Louisville, man. So Louisville really has reason to show up here. They're coming off an embarrassing loss as a huge favorite, and it's senior day, and I know they have an SEC team. It's a rivalry game against Kentucky. It's the Battle of Kentucky up next, but are they going to overlook senior day against a Pitt team that's been good all year, who's ahead of them in overall record at least? I don't think so. Pitt, on the other hand, I think they're just dead at this point, man. I played against them, against SMU and Virginia, because I thought Pitt was just rolling along, like being overvalued, basically. Because look at who Pitt beat. Not a gauntlet of teams here, man. Even though I know Cal is a little bit undervalued. That Syracuse game was totally misleading with McCord for Syracuse. Is it McCord? I think it's McCord. Threw 3 pick-6s in that game, and I think 5 picks. Syracuse outgained Pitt massively in that game. So that was a situation where That was a totally misleading result. And coming off of that, Pitt ran into an actual good team in SMU and got blown out pretty much. And then coming off of that, I thought they were going to be in a hangover spot, and they were, and they lost again to Virginia. And Pitt did lose their quarterback, but they showed up again last week, man. Pitt, they lost Holstein, their quarterback. Whoever their backup quarterback is, played pretty well last week. And this is why I don't like Pitt, man. This was their senior night for Pitt. That was a huge game. Like, what does Pitt have left now that they're knocked out of the... They looked like they were going to potentially maybe be vying for a playoff spot. Now they're completely out of it. They just lost their biggest game left on the schedule to Clemson in senior night for Pittsburgh, their final home game. And the way they lost that game was just brutal, man. This is a close game. Pitt had the game tied, and they were actually winning the game. They took the lead in the final 2 minutes with a field goal, and then they gave up a touchdown on a 50-yard run to lose the game. And I think there might have been some questionable reffing in that game, too, at the end. I did have it on up here, but I forget exactly what happened there. But how do you lose that brutally and get back up off the mat, man? With Pitt, they're already in a bowl, and they pretty much have nothing left to play for at this point, man. They have no other goals to try to achieve here, man. And is it really going to be a goal to go in and beat Louisville? I don't really think so. I don't really see it. Louisville has a lot more reason to be motivated here in this game. And the other situation that comes into play here for Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh, yeah, they're not going to be looking ahead to Boston College. So in rivalry week, they don't have a rivalry game in rivalry week. I don't think that is a rivalry. But Pitt, look at what else is going on here with Pitt, man. Holstein, as I mentioned, he got injured, I think, in the game against Virginia. So Yarnell played against Clemson, and yeah, he did pretty well. Yarnell put up 350 yards of offense, 350 yards passing, which Holstein only did that once this entire season against a North Carolina defense who gets lit up by everybody. So is Yarnell actually better than Holstein? I don't know. But here's the problem. Holstein seems like he's ready to go this week. I think he's going to be back. So if Holstein comes in and plays this game, and this might be part of the reason why the line's moving a little bit and why we might actually be able to get 7 on Louisville, I think the line is going to move a little bit in Pitt's direction because the odds makers are going to rank Holstein as the better quarterback because he is the starter over Yarnell. But I don't even know if that's an upgrade because Yarnell threw so well last week against a pretty good Clemson team. And yeah, he was pumped up for it too. But if Holstein comes back, that's going to be the reverse injured player spot for Pitt too because he's got to come back. He's got to find his rhythm again. And the team has to redevelop that like chemistry with him again, even though I know he only missed one game and part of another game. But still, it is the reverse injured player spot, so it means you might be getting extra value on Louisville here. The odds makers are telling you Louisville is the better team, even though they have the worst overall record by 1 game. So public might be coming in on this and thinking, yeah, I know Pitt's lost a few games, but look at how well they did against Clemson, man. They almost beat Clemson, and now you just need them to come within a touchdown or more than a touchdown against Louisville, a team that also hasn't been winning games recently and just lost to Stanford last week and has a worse record than Pitt. I think the public, for all those reasons, is going to be eyeing Pitt in this one, even though the market percentages don't quite appear that way. The fact that the higher cash percentages on Louisville kind of indicates that the market is indicating on Louisville there, and I think Pitt is a little bit of a public underdog there. So that's going to do it for me, man. So my plays one more time are UConn is actually the first game up, plus 10.5. I don't know if you can get 10 or 10.5 now, but either way, I think it's fine. Northwestern plus 10 or 10.5, whatever the best is you can get there. And Louisville minus 7.5, or you might even be able to get 7 on this one. Those are the 3 actual toad plays here, putting me up to 6 plays on the week. And I know I am 1-2 this week. I won last night at NC State. They covered. They were almost covering wire to wire that one and almost won the game outright. So NC State was a win for me after I did lose on Northern Illinois and Eastern Michigan. I lost in the MAC. I dropped from 3-0 and MAC play to 3-2. I know those weren't great. I think the Northern Illinois play was actually a stronger play than the Eastern Michigan one, but what can you do? I like these plays when it's Saturday and I can really whittle the list down to what I think are the strongest plays. That's what I did there. That's what they are. That's going to do it for me. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. Yeah, Ozempic. They might actually sponsor a bowl at this point. The Ozempic Lose Weight Fatty Bowl. Top Lobster. Yeah, he should he should sponsor a bowl, man. It's the Top Lobster Tower Gang Bowl. Let's do it. The Top Lobster Nephilim Bowl. How about that, man? Yeah. I like it. I like all of that. Will, you're going to make your first bet. A preferred platform, I would say DraftKings at this point. FanDuel's not bad either. Those are kind of the top two. I mean, depending on what's available in your state, DraftKings, they have their shit together the most. I mean, it's not a surprise really, but one of those two between them and FanDuel. DraftKings, I mean, they are in Boston, so they're a home company here as well. So, I mean, whatever. The Nadeau Bowl, yeah, it's the Nadeau Commit Suicide Bowl. The Nadeau Shave Co. Commit Suicide Bowl. That sounds pretty good. The Rife Technology Laser Dildo Bowl. I like it, man. I like all of these better. Dude, when we get to bowl play, I'm going to have some fun making fun of these bowl names, man. These bowl names are so ridiculous, man. Thank you, Will. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. I will see you later, JC. I'll be back in the morning to talk college basketball. I really have to run down this college basketball slate. It's difficult for me, man. There are just so many games, and I get up in the morning and do it. Ugh. Once college football ends, like finally we're not going to have a full college football slate anymore, and I can actually focus on basketball. Basketball hasn't been good for me, I know, but it's starting to turn around a little bit. So I'm gaining some momentum there at the very least. And I'll talk about NBA and NHL tomorrow as well in the morning, and I'll be back tomorrow night, probably late because I'm going to see Steel Panther tomorrow night. Gonna get to see some titties, man. I always like seeing Steel Panther. They not only do they rock, they're like legitimately good, but they're hilarious. They're actually legitimately good dudes. And you get a bunch of naked chicks on stage, so hell yeah. Emily, I don't know, man. I mean, she's we can't get married, man. It just can't happen. I think it's the cards. It's not in the cards. But thanks, guys, for hanging out. And yes, I will be back, so I'll be doing my NFL video at some point. Right now, I might only have one other NFL play, man. I had Cleveland last night. I loved the Cleveland play last night. The Browns, that was an outright winner. Almost became not an outright winner, but it still got there. That was my favorite play of the week. I might only have one more NFL play this week. Yeah, man, I do like Emily. She's cool. Yeah, that's right. All right, that's going to do it for me, man. I'm Tower Gang Toad. Follow the Tower Gang Podcast, patreon.com/Tower Gang. Of course, throw us some support. You get live pre-show, post-show, hang out with us in a Telegram, submit to the mailbag, bonus content. Follow me, Tower Gang Toad, on Twitter, and follow flapper.net, FLAPPR.net, the world's finest smut blog, where we talk about women, politics, football, everything the dudes are into, man. And I'm running their betting odds for Milkers of the Year, which I have to update again. Nancy Mace, I think, is kind of climbing up in the ratings there a little bit. We'll see. She might compete with Sydney Sweeney there to win that whole thing, but we'll see. All right, that's it for me, man. Try to get some sleep maybe at this point. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I appreciate it. A lot of people in the chat tonight, which I like. There are more people in this show than in the NFL show. I don't know why that's the case. Friday night versus Saturday night, maybe. I don't know. Or people just like college better than pro, or because it's a longer video usually. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, I can't figure it out. I can't figure out why any of you guys like this shit. It's just crazy to me. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Peace out.